Shalom. Welcome to 5 Minutes of Torah with the BI Rabbi. I'm Rabbi Adam Stein. This week down in the U.S., there are probably thousands of rabbis like me, pastors, ministers, imams, all sorts of people, tearfully trying to pull together a sermon, a drash, a word of Torah, to somehow make sense of what happened in Florida on Wednesday. A 19-year-old killed 17 people at a high school where he was formerly a student and from which he had been expelled. He bought an assault rifle, an AR-15, legally from a store, apparently posted pictures online of himself with his gun. In Florida, amazingly, it's easier to buy one of these assault rifles used in war and video games than it is to buy a handgun. But in Parkland, Florida on Wednesday, there were parents receiving frantic phone calls and texts and harrowing emails. Perhaps a couple hundred parents in Parkland who were told, "Your child is okay." For all of them, I'm sure, there was relief. For many of them, there may have been disbelief. Are you sure? Have you seen him? Is it really her? For the parents who are giving horrifying, shattering news, may we never know firsthand how that feels. Did they also say, "Are you sure? Or have you seen him? Or is it really her?" Or did they hold on to their disbelief until they fell asleep crying? Did they only believe the worst when the detectives and the doctors positively identified the bodies? And of course, you may have heard this time it wasn't just children or teenagers. There were also many adults in the school as well, the beloved staff and teachers of this high school. This week we're in the midst of a Torah portion called Turmah. It refers, this word, to the donations that were given to help build the tabernacle in the wilderness. The word Turmah comes from the root to rise up or to lift up, but really you lift up something, in this case when you're giving a donation or a gift. It occurred to me this week that these parents, these friends, these relatives, this community will never get their gifts back. The gifts of these beautiful children, teenagers, adults, teachers have been taken away by a teenager, a disturbed, violent, angry teenager, with a gun that he had that was designed to kill as many people possible in as little time as possible. And these young gifts are gone, now only their memories remain. The names, 17 names, I was just looking at them this morning, going through, it's heartbreaking. Even just the first names pull at our hearts. Alyssa, Martin, Nicholas, Aaron, Jamie, Christopher, Luke, Kara, Gina, Joaquin, Elena, Meadow, Helena, Alex, Carmen, Peter. Names of human beings who are no more. Several of them, 5, were Jewish. Large Jewish community in Florida and Broward County, very large Jewish community. It doesn't make it any worse that 5 were Jewish, but they were all 17 human beings. But it brings it closer to home when some of the victims are part of our North American Jewish community. A Jewish family of 4 is now 3 as parents and brother lost Jamie Gutenberg. She and her brother volunteered at the Friendship Initiative, a program that pairs neurotypical students like them with special needs kids. Another volunteer at the center, Gina Montalto, was also killed in the shooting. And this on Jewish Disabilities and Inclusion Month that we just celebrated at a beautiful evening last week at the JCC, and in commemorations and actions throughout communities in North America. You can read or hear in the news more gut-wrenching stories about the teenage and adult lives cut short. Quotes from Alyssa Al-Hadef's friends and counselors from her Jewish summer camp. The powerful story of Scott Beagle, also Jewish, who was shot after he herded kids into a room and shut the door. He reopened it to let more students in and was shot before he was able to re-lock the door. He was also a staff member at a summer camp and was called a friend, an amazing teacher, and now also a hero. Once again, gun control will be debated down in the U.S. I hope something changes, laws, culture, something. But I have major doubts because nothing has changed after any of the previous awful tragedies of this sort. Wednesday's shooting was the 18th school shooting this year in the U.S., this year that just started. It's unbelievable, but there's something deeply wrong. some mix of a severe lack of gun control laws that make sense, and perhaps a culture that reveres them. Shootings like this don't happen in other first world countries. They don't even happen in most third world countries. Honestly, it makes me glad that I live here in Canada. We lived for 5 years in Australia also, and they enacted very strict gun laws after an awful, awful shooting in Port Arthur in Tasmania. They took thousands of assault rifles and other guns off the streets. They've had no more mass shootings. So what can we do? What can we actually do when something like this happens? We can cry, we can express shock, we can try to put ourselves in the shoes of those affected directly, difficult to impossible though that may be. Perhaps we can make sure that something like this doesn't happen in BC, in Canada. Thankfully, it so rarely does. It has happened. The CBC recounted a history of school shootings in Canada in a story they ran a year ago. There have been 11 since 1975. The biggest was in Montreal in 1989. Many of you probably remember it. 14 students and a college employee were killed. Utterly, utterly tragic. Almost 30 years ago, those 15 people were killed in Montreal. In the US, 17 were killed a couple days ago in the 18th school shooting since January. To be honest, Canada does have, I think I'm new here, but it does have some strict gun control laws. But there have been some shootings, but it doesn't compare to the 438 people shot in the US and the 138 who were killed in the past couple decades. Just awful. Now here's something we can do, and it's not much. We can hold on to our children, if you have children, or your grandchildren, nieces, nephews, friends, parents, siblings. We can't be paralyzed by fear of what's horrifically possible, but we can treasure the moments that we have, and we can try to stay safe. Shabbat Shalom.